I won't make any of you talk, I promise, until you're done chewing. I waitressed in college and I had this habit of walking up to the tables and making people talk to me while they were chewing, so I won't do that anymore. I'm Andrea Lynn. I'm the founder of Twin River Design, Marketing, and Strategy, and have been in business for 8 years, going on 8 years, somewhere around that. So I'm really, really excited to be here today. I have my partner in crime, Avery Bailey. She's our design, content, and everything else that I'm learning. She's kind of our TikToker and Instagram reeler and all that stuff. So helping me learn some of the ropes too. I usually do intros, but with a crowd this big, I think what I'm going to ask you to do instead is write down what your intro would be, how you would introduce yourself. So everybody should have a pad of paper in front of you. You can take a second away from your sandwich if you don't mind. And then just write down briefly how you would introduce yourself to the group. And we'll use that later in an exercise. There's no sharing answers here. I'm just kidding. So obviously you're in a business setting. How are you introducing yourself and how you represent what business or organization you're here to represent as well? Okay. So a little bit more about Twin River. My passion is in brand development, marketing, just communications in general, how to enchant people with your brand and with your mission for whatever business it is that you have. And believe it or not, we can even represent crane companies and well drilling companies and still kind of successfully create stories that inspire people to want to choose them as their preference. We work in all facets of marketing. So today I'm going to focus on more of the digital social media side. We will focus, there was a lot of questions that were not quite in line with this. So we are versed at a lot of the other questions. I had somebody ask about fundraising. We've worked from nonprofits to, again, like I said, industrial, general contracting, farms. I actually did this similar kind of exhibit for farmers, organic farmers. So it's been really neat to be able to work in different capacities with different industries. So I do want this to be collaborative. So like I said, I will not make you talk until your mouth is not full. But until then, we'll go through a few different things and kind of get an idea of, from start to finish, how to walk away with a social media post today. That's our objective and our goal through the end of this. So if you do have questions, feel free to ask as we go along. The top four kind of ideas that I created really from what you were asking. We had quite a few questions come through, quite a few objectives that different people had as well. So I tried really hard to keep them in an hour and make them all kind of align. So a lot of people had questions about how to build your brand. How do you build kind of what your footprint is? I had some questions about rebranding, people that had maybe just acquired a business and wanted to create a little bit more of a shiny brand from a business that had been around for a while, especially with their new story as a business owner as well. So we'll focus on building your brand voice. We'll look at just content and brand strategy. Again, this being focused on social media, a lot of content-driven information is really helpful in how to create and kind of put things in front of people that are going to be conducive to your brand. And then obviously creation, planning, platforms, and placement, which sounds really big, but we can simplify it, and that's my goal for you today. And again, any questions you have, nothing is off the table for questions. And then we'll create your very own social media post at the end. This can be translated across all different forms of media. One kind of best practice, if you're not already doing this, would be to create one concept. So let's say you're going to do a social media post on a Friday. Maybe you blog for your business. You would then also create that theme across that blog and then use that on all of the platforms that you're populating. That way it's just not reinventing the wheel 3 or 4 or 5 times, depending on how many platforms you're using. Just to get an idea, just shout out, what industries are you guys from? I heard you're a youth pastor? Okay, youth minister? Okay, very cool. And what's the church? So it's a parachurch, actually. Okay. Affiliation, okay, very cool. Other industries, I heard there was a greenhouse. I'm like an ex-farmer. I still farm, so I'm like a green thumb. So that's very cool. It just got difficult, let's just say, when the droughts happened. So that's cool to hear that you're embracing that. Any other industries? Yes. Okay. Did you guys just open or fairly recently?
No, we started hemp in 2018 and we just currently received our license. So
Nice. Very cool. And where are you located in?
I'm down on Main Street.
Okay.
I'm just down a block, 35.
Okay.
We actually just bought the local coin, so we're remodeling that. Right
Nice.
now. Yeah.
Okay.
That's exciting.
I'll have to take a tour around town. I'm from New Ulm, so I'll just have to make Hutchinson my home away from home. Yes.
I am a virtual assistant and I work from home, so I have kids and building a brand with all of that and fancy.
And what does a virtual assistant do?
I do some digital marketing. I do some other things like general admin and project management.
Okay.
And stuff. But yeah, with building a brand, with working from home, and also trying to find balance with the kids.
Yeah. And are the kids home when you're working? Yeah, I don't envy you right now. I have them mine home, but they're older, so I'm like, just go play, do something. They're How old are you?
I'm about preschool's ending.
Yeah, I know. I think all of us are almost ready for it to start again. Any other industries? Did I hear healthcare? Yes. Okay. Do you use WordPress or? Okay. Very cool. Yes.
Retail with an emphasis on members and consignment for handcrafted and
Okay. So upcycling?
some upcycling, others just bringing items that are retail items, and others just make items from scratch.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Yes.
Farm retail store, food and wellness practitioners, wellness center.
And you said you're on a farm?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're growing medicinal things there?
We have that and grass-fed meat.
Okay. That's what I wasn't doing meat before, but chickens, eggs, and produce. So market farm. Anyone else? Yes.
We're a 501c3 nonprofit focusing on seniors and nursing homes.
Okay.
On birthdays and Christmas. We get involved in a lot of the community outreach.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll have to, on that note, because so many of you have spoken, I do have a business card drop and I have a prize giveaway. So when you're leaving or if you're mingling or we have a break, just feel free to drop your business card in as well. I'd love to get to know more about each of your organizations. One more organization or business or industry. Anybody? Yes.
We have a driving range.
Okay.
And also starting a fruit orchard, organic and berries.
Very cool. Okay. Man, you guys are from all over the place. That's fantastic. Well, so I'll try to make this translatable across everyone because really what you're trying to do is very much the same. Create evangelism for your brand, kind of a brand that people want to hug, so to speak. And really it sounds, it's the most challenging industry that I've worked with is the construction industry because it's a very different demographic, but there still is a way because it's just all based on trust and relatability and them being able to embrace maybe a story, a family story, those types of things. And again, we'll go into that a little bit more detail when we talk about your introductions later. So a brand voice, how many of you heard that phrase before? Brand voice or a brand footprint? It's basically, again, relatability. It's the attitude that originally when I looked up different kind of definitions of this, it said kind of a way to create a human entity out of your brand. To me, that feels really weird. So I took that out of there, but it is, and I just replaced it with kind of the tone. And how are you unique? So you might have another greenhouse just up the road. You might have another apple orchard or a berry farm, those types of things. How are you creating uniques within your brand? And then how are you communicating that? And it's really important in every organization and even nonprofit sector to be able to have some of those kind of diversifications. So you have different things that appeal to different donors, different customers, and they can spread the word and referrals for you as well. An elevator pitch is very helpful for this. So in a situation where you do have a lot, like you were talking about your retail store, that's a lot going on. So I think not only identifying who you're talking to in the first place, so like what do they want, what would appeal to them the most, but how do you very simply define the things that you have so that it really appeals to everyone that you're trying to kind of give that elevator pitch to. And then your purpose. Again, even in the construction industry, there's purpose. When you develop a business or an organization, it's not solely for profits. You know, usually there's a lot of heart behind something like that because it's a lot of work. I'm sure you all would agree. There's a lot of work that goes into business building and business operations. We'll do a brief exercise with this a little bit later, but take a second to write these things down if you're not familiar with brand voice, because they're really what's going to form the next slides, the next exercises going forward. Okay. Who knows this quote and where it came from? What brand is this representative of? If you can do it, you can dream it. Thank you. I did it backwards, didn't I? You got me. I was literally just there. That's why I have a tan. I was just in Florida at Walt Disney World. Yeah. Write down very briefly, and let me tell you, it is epic. Like I felt like I just went to another universe. So if you haven't been there, it's very crowded. So if you don't like crowds, I wouldn't recommend it. But write down briefly. So this is obviously a tagline, one of many. But write down also something that you feel when you think of Walt Disney or Disney movies, Disney World. Very briefly, write down just a feeling by association. Actually made my stomach growl. I'm loving it. Again, it says really nothing about a hamburger. It's more about the feeling that it exudes, the kind of that connection with the brand. We won't do that exercise with this one because it just makes me hungry. Breakfast of Champions. Close. Wheaties. I was just in an antique store. This makes me feel so old. We were with my kids, I was in an antique store, and they looked down on the ground and there's this box of Wheaties with the twins, you know, when I have a picture of it. Mom, what are Wheaties? Do they make Wheaties anymore? Okay, well, I feel better now because I was like, well, it's the Breakfast of Champions, don't you know? Yeah, it made me feel old for a second that it was I think I grew up with that box. And it was in an antique store, so it's not a good day. Just do it, Nike. With this one, let's write down an additional, just a feeling that comes with the Nike brand. And it can't be expensive. It can be. Who wouldn't mind sharing just, at least with the first one, what was some emotional ties to Walt Disney? Or kind of what happens in your heart when you hear Disney World or, yes. Think of your childhood. Anybody else? Yes. It was antiquated. Yeah, animatronics were a little scary, but to say the least, but it was good. Yes.
Everything is so colorful.
Mm-hmm.
It's eye candy.
Yeah. Yes.
Nostalgia.
Yep. Timeless, maybe. We went in to a movie theater where you can watch. It's 3D. I don't know who has ever been there, but it's 3D. And Daffy Duck, like literally, like there's kids kind of bracing themselves because they think they're going to get hit by Daffy Duck, and water comes out of the ceiling, so when something splashes, you get wet, and it's just very interactive. And I wasn't prepared for that, so it was a little weird. But at the end, The Little Mermaid came on, and that was like, you know, the popular movie back in my era, and I just teared up because it was just like a definition of your youth. But I think Walt Disney World and Disney does a great job of perpetuating that feeling through their brand strategy. So if you ever follow somebody for the storytelling aspect of it, Disney is fantastic. And they're, I mean, trillionaires, so that helps a lot too. But Nike is another great one. Dove is great at storytelling. I mean, it's literally antiperspirant that somebody puts under their armpits, but it's empowering. You know, their brand is very empowering. They came out with think it was during the Olympics and then some Super Bowl advertisements where it was very female focused, but just empowerment. And so you can make really anything translatable to something that is motivating, empowering, nostalgic, any of those words that you're using, even if you sell a product that's not intrinsically that way. So a brand voice is, these are very long slides and I'm going to go through them a little more quickly. I'll let you write some of these down, but I'll also just give some narrative. So when we're creating content, I think the most magical part of content creation is telling your story. I had and this is part of the exercise in writing down your introduction. When I was teaching farmers about a year and a half ago, a lot of these same principles, everybody came in, and they just milked their cows or slaughtered something or whatnot in the morning, came in and they were sitting through this seminar, and I had them all introduce themselves. And, I think one gentleman said, he said, yep, I have free range beef on about 40 acres outside of Maple Lake. They were down by Mankato. And, everybody kind of proceeded to go around and tell how much acreage they had, or what, I'm a specialty crop producer, or again, I do holistic healing, those types of things, but very specific to one thing and very almost geographic. I own 40 acres. I run free range pigs on that. So we did an exercise and I said, now that we understand a little bit more about what your brand voice is, introduce yourselves again. And there was like 8 people, so we could do that. So the gentleman that really stuck out to me was the gentleman that said, I run free range beef on 40 acres south of Maple Lake. Again, not verbatim, but the next introduction that he did, he said, I run organically grown beef on our 5-generation farm with my children helping. And we do direct to the consumer beef, or whatever, production beef. And it was so neat when you went around the room because everybody had such a drastically different story. And they were beautiful because they were about heritage and how much of a family kind of heirloom their business was. So I think at the end, we'll do something like that. Again, just in the interest of time, I wish I could have all of you introduce yourself twice, but we'll do something like that. That is the fundamentals of storytelling. Even if you're in an industry that's not necessarily warm and fuzzy, or, if you're in a nonprofit, but even more so, that's really important because that's where you're finding donors that can get really kind of wrapped around your mission. Especially in not-for-profits, using your core values. If you don't have core values in your business or in your position, I would highly recommend forming at least 3 to 4 pillars of what you feel you are about in your business, because that's going to be the foundation of what you start telling about your story. Would there be one person that would be willing, totally putting you on the spot, so I apologize, but is there somebody that can think quickly of 3 to 4 of those pillars? And I can explain what that means more if you're not quite sure. Do you want me to explain? Or do somebody have a kind of couple pillars? You're looking at me maybe. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. And maybe local, because that's huge. Home, I would, so in your storytelling, that'd be a really neat post. We're locally driven or powered by local vendors, keeping your home as comfortable as possible with locally sourced and vintage, I think you'd said that, products. And then a call to action. So again, you always want a call to action at the end of your posts. Shouldn't say that. 20% of the time you want a call to action at the end of your posts. There's an 80-20 rule, and I think that's the next slide. And it can be flexible, but you want to have kind of this cadence of storytelling, solicitation, information, storytelling, solicitation, so that people aren't constantly feeling like you're trying to deal with, throw a deal at them. But using those pillars are extremely important because they help you stay true to your brand as well. So if you develop those pillars, again, just homework for when you're having a cup of coffee tomorrow morning, I would strongly suggest in any industry. And the pillars are going to be what you're about. So they're not like at any time. I came from Anytime Fitness for 20 years at their corporate office, and it was people, profits, play, purpose, and play. And I think that's helpful. I don't think it's a great brand strategy. It was more internal, but it showed that they were people first, right? You have to be profit driven or donation driven. So just thinking in terms of what are those 3 to 5 things that are kind of holistically intrinsic to your brand, or you want to make that way. So that will help form your storytelling. Any questions on that? I know it's really abstract, but I can answer questions too, and I'm around forever, so you can email me in the future. Somebody had asked a really specific question about kind of that cadence. This is what I would recommend. And again, writing down that kind of cycle of storytelling or brand evangelism, getting people to understand who you are, your brand story, then solicitation, information, even having a cycle of 3 to 4 things is really helpful, just so you don't feel like you're constantly, offering a discount or soliciting to people. Twitter or X is a little bit of it really depends. I think that has become a very political and media driven place. I personally, for any of my clients, I don't put a lot of time into Twitter. And for retail, like the industries that you've described to me, I wouldn't suggest it. I used to do it. I market for a resort in Belize, and I used to tweet, and it was a total waste of time. So I just stopped doing that and don't do it with most clients. So you can choose, if it's an industry that seems to fit there, you can also just go through the feeds and see what you're up against or kind of what you're playing against. But I would stick with Instagram. TikTok obviously can be one depending on what your demographic is, Facebook, YouTube, and we'll go through kind of placement later. But this is a good suggestion for cadence. Many and most industries, I would say, do better Thursday through Sunday, just because people are either checked out of work mentally or have more time on their hands. Nonprofits seem to do well on social media at any time. I've worked with 3 not-for-profits, and all of them have just stumped me on why that is the case, but I just went with it and it worked. So, and then just to go back, this is a little bit of a review, but just the cadence, just ensuring that your story and finding other things. So, you might have one niche. So like I'll just go to the resort in Belize that we market for, and Avery does beautiful work helping me on that. I've done that for 7 years, and it's a 3-acre property on an island 7 miles off the coast of Belize. And they've literally had the same excursions for 7 years. So it's become a little challenging to figure out how to tell that same story over and over and over again with 3 to 5 posts a week. But I usually look for I think of different people and how to frame the experience. So let's say zip lining and cave tubing. I might story tell with a millennial in mind, and that story looks very different than Gen X or somebody who's coming away for a group gathering, a wedding. It's a value added to a retreat. So trying to create different ways that the products or services that you have to offer can appeal to different people and tell that story over and over again. Just thinking of examples. Maybe I'll use the greenhouse. I can envision, obviously it's spring, so spring is sprung, those types of things. But as you get into kind of that later season, again, people that maybe want to diversify their garden, they want to focus on perennials. So you're selling the same thing. You aren't ever going to not have plants, but how are you diversifying to tell somebody, hey, this is a really cool trend, or this is a color trend, or, move your black-eyed Susans over here because now everything's pink, those types of things. So just always constantly trying to evolve the value that you bring to someone as an educator, as the brand like authority on your business, Because if you're going to do business for a long time, you have to keep it fresh. So, oops, I went backwards. Okay, again, very long slide, so I'll paraphrase. We've already talked about this a little bit, but these are big words that are basically mean, who are you talking to? What's your target market? I love psychographics because it makes me sound really smart, but it's basically, if you've ever done a sponsored ad on Facebook or Instagram or Meta, it's values, attributes, behaviors, buying trends that you can either add or omit. How many of you have used Meta to place sponsored ads? Oh, wow. Okay. Cool. That's great, though. I can help. So when you are looking, so not to get too nerdy with you for a second, but so social, we all, who knows what an algorithm is? Okay, that's a pretty like buzzword. So algorithms are meant to take all of these attributes, so values, interests. Case in point, I went shopping at Dick's Sporting Goods, and I don't golf that much, but I needed a couple clubs, right, just to add whatever to what we had. I left there, and let me tell you, I got retargeted for golf from Dick's Sporting Goods for like months. So they are watching through your credit card, through your IP address on your phone. It's totally Big Brother, and it's weird, but it happens. So you get to use that information because not only with the organic posts is your algorithm going to get to the right people, but you can pay through sponsored ads to either add behaviors. So if I am marketing for the resort in Belize, I want people that have searched Belize, beach island vacation, tiki drinks, tiki huts, and then I want to omit things that maybe would be not conducive to somebody, or ages, demographics, things like that. I'll bypass that. We can go into, just keep on going. And then your brand personality. We talked a little bit about how this is kind of a humanistic, or a way to create a humanistic feel for your brand. I would always say that whenever I market for clients, I'm very conversational, and it's just done really well. I would say that professional but conversational at the same time. So I want that person to feel like I'm cool through my Facebook post, or that brand is cool, or like they want to get to know you more, and you're very relatable and approachable. And that has worked in every industry that I've done marketing for. So just looking at, and some, like if I'm marketing for a law firm, I'm not going to be quirky and playful. Probably. I mean, there might be a place for that because you want to know that there are human beings that can represent you, and they're relatable as well. But every different industry is going to have a little bit different vibe. I'm just going to look at this. Okay. Kind of a reiteration of what I already said. And be thinking of this. We will share in a second. I'm sick of listening to myself. So as you're creating your content, like I said, we'll do that before the hour is over. Think of it as an exercise like speed dating with your perfect customer. So how are you wooing them with what you have to offer? I think cannabis and CBD would be a really interesting niche for that, is how do you turn people who might have a stigma about that to embrace the true health benefits of those things. So I think, again, very conversational would be a recommendation, very approachable, kind of talking to your consumer like it's your mom or dad, those types of things, just to open up that demographic. And there's a lot more adoption than there was probably 10 years ago, but it just helps to have more of a conversational approach. That was an awesome ringtone. And then just, so when you are, this is an exercise that we'll get to next, but when you are creating content, something that I've done, especially when I have a significant amount of clients and I just need to make sure that everything's kind of organized for the next month of content, is I will make sure that I'm going through everything or piece of value or service or good that you are able to provide to the people, to your speed dating person. So again, I might have, with Belize being the poster child, I might have adventure, I'll have relaxation, I'll have excursions, kind of that adrenaline rush kind of looking person, cocktails by the beach, And then I will go through and I will make a month of content based off of all of those behaviors, essentially, or the values that those people would be looking for. And in a nutshell, you're done. And a month is a lot. I've done it for, like I said, 8 years. So I probably go a little more quickly. But just when you're taking that time to write things down, how are you approaching that customer from every angle that your product or good or service can give them a solution? Is this all like way too much? Are we good? Okay. Nobody's falling asleep yet, so it's good. It's good so far. Yeah. What's one thing that, again, you're done eating, so I can totally have you talk. What's one thing that you feel you've learned, if somebody wouldn't mind volunteering? Just a tidbit, even. Just putting you on the spot.
Sure.
Yes.
Since we are a nonprofit and we seek donations, and our main objective is to make sure that nursing home residents receive Christmas gifts and birthday
Oh.
gifts, and pretty much tailored to their needs. And so we're gonna let our fan base know that it could be mom or dad or grandpa or grandma or somebody you love needs a little attention during their birthday and Christmas, so they don't feel alone and left out. So appealing to that.
And you make a great point. To be specific is really important. Do you have Business Networking International here, BNI? I'm looking at you, Julie.
So there's a group called Networking Referral Group.
Okay.
I'm part of. They used to be BNI, and then they left that organization.
Okay.
Thursdays here.
Okay. Well, and I only cite them because something that I took away probably in my 20s. When you ask, so I was in the fitness industry for 20 plus years. I don't want to date myself, but had 6 clubs from 21 to 26 or 7, and then sold them and then went to the corporate office. But in being in 6 years in business in my early 20s, literally not knowing what I was doing, I taught myself everything. And when you do that, you learn how to network. You can't be an introvert so much. But one thing I really took away, because I'd always say, well, if you have a referral from me, that'd be great. It's not super effective. So to your point about being specific, and actually this was not intentional, but I'll do it anyway. You have 2 business cards in front of you. Both are mine. So BNI taught me, if you have a friend, a family member, a coworker, or even a significant other that you think could use our services, it'd be great if you'd pass my card along. Right? So I'm really specific about it. That was so tacky. Sorry, guys. I didn't mean it. It was not contrived. But to your point, there is a great power in asking for something specific. We've done that a lot more with the island, and Avery's been awesome at coming up with this stuff. Again, because I've done it for 7 years and she's so fresh. But it's just like, what do you want to do today? What's a reason? Not just like, well, we have this beautiful beach where you can have a cocktail and lay in a hammock. That's really general, and that's going to get old very fast. So she's talking about our staff, some of the redeeming qualities about why people choose that over other options for resorts. But more specifically, like I just did a dive post today. It's been a dive resort for 40 years and it's blowing up. We did a post the other day about one of our tour guides. Very specific things. Summer travel, like we're definitely need people because, as you'd imagine, Belize is not a huge summer destination. So we're trying to get more people there. So really targeting, like, need an excuse to come away this summer. What was the one you just did? Sorry, not to make you talk, but you just did one. The best vacations are ones, I think you don't have to overthink.
Yeah, like don't overthink it, surprise yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we're trying to encourage last minute travel. So the specifics are fantastic. And even saying things like, like we have a lot of grandparents and you said a few different people, but really targeting the specifics of either the effort or the good or service. Anybody else?
I have more questions.
Yeah.
So, in my experience, engagement is low nowadays, and I have a lot of clients who come to me and they're liking things or whatever. Like, what have you found any particular posts that stand out a little bit more, get more engagement, or like
Sure.
People are just kind of scrolling, they're not liking, they're definitely not commenting.
Yep.
They're not sharing.
Are you, well, and some of that happens with a political year. I remember the hardest year to ever market was a election year, probably, I don't remember, 6 years, whatever it would have been before. What industries, like, can you think of the industries that you're specifically having a challenge with?
Well, I'm in a couple of different virtual assistant groups, and this is just something that everybody's kind of
Sure.
dealing with.
Yep.
So I think it's it.
Okay.
Definitely the ones that I'm seeing the most are the ones that are like the storytelling, like about me posts versus like buy this or
That they're getting more likes as a storytelling? Oh, for sure. One more question so I can answer more in a well-rounded way. What demographic would you say? Like, are those posts usually for what generation?
I would say over millennial.
Okay. A couple things. I would maybe like dabble in a paid post just to get followers up on the page, because you can go in, and I can show you all how to do this if we have time before we go, or whoever wants to see it. If you post on Facebook, when somebody likes or reacts to your post, you can invite them to your page. So one of the beautiful things about doing a sponsored post is you might get 75 likes when you would have gotten 15. And you can invite all those new people to your page, and it's algorithm based, so they're likely to want to engage with your page. So I'd maybe do a few paid campaigns just to try to get your followers up. Most people, from what I found, if you're doing stories and reels, they won't like it. It's a swipe factor thing anyway. And the Facebook piece of it, I would stick with the storytelling, like just stick with what works, and maybe even try a few things, like more, and I don't know what industry it is, but just even more emotion or more mission-based storytelling. I think people, and I know this especially with just upcoming generations, is people are more experiential based. Like everything is turning into experience. And so if you can create more experience with those posts, or more of that, kind of what we talked about with Walt Disney, Nike, Dove, if you can create more heart within those posts and connection that way, you'll probably get more traction. You could also do an engagement post. So it's like, you don't want to do a like, comment, share, because you'll get bots all over it. You can't get away from that anymore. But so I market for the Catholic school in New Ulm. And we just want to get the word out that there's still enrollment opportunities. And I just said, we'd love to share the story of New Acts with anyone you think would love to listen. And I had like 20 shares. It was pretty substantial. And again, that is like a very tightly knit group. It's not like out in cyberspace. This is like already a tightly knit community. But just trying those things and dabbling that. So you could do, let's just say, info, storytelling, engagement, solicitation, and maybe try to rotate it 4 times, because that solicitation post, if you're not getting that, by the time those people like you, you're more likely to get some traction on that last post. Yeah, it is. It's difficult too. I think the times also, it's like if stuff is kind of icky in the world, people are just less likely to like be solicited to. They want to see their friends and their family on Facebook instead of an ad or a business. But I think there's a way to become their friend, and that's kind of what I'm trying to teach, is how do you become that equal of that person that they kind of want to see on their Facebook page, with pretty colors from the floral department, or those types of things. Imagery is huge, and I don't think I even touched on that. Imagery is like, I'll just get out of this for a second. I'm totally just trying to get you guys to go to Belize, but so this is, I don't know how big this is. Yeah, okay, she says. Where do I sign? That's what your business card thing is for. No, I'm just kidding. Totally kidding. So this is, I just did this morning for a real estate agent. It has nothing to do with the house, but finally find your quiet place, or peace and quiet rather. These are beautiful things that Avery has done for the Belize. So again, in an environment where you can show pretty things, in a retail setting, if you can add a little piece of greenery next to whatever you're trying to show, and take aesthetic pictures, no matter what environment you're in, that helps a lot, because it's just human nature to be drawn to something that's pretty, and then you read the content. So that'll probably help get more engagement too. Other questions? I would much rather take your questions and talk from those than a slide. So if you have questions, where are we at for time? Oops. I'm going to breeze through these a little bit because they're just more conceptual. Who does their social media marketing here? Okay. Do you use a content planner or do you just use Meta? What content planner do you use?
I use a combination of Meta and then
Okay. Yeah, Canva's great.
yeah, it's one less
Step. Yeah. Yeah, we've actually talked about that. We're kind of transitioning now to open up to more clients, and we need a scheduling platform. Like, I just can't be putting stuff. There's a pipeline right now that we need to shorten. So, anybody else use like a Monday.com or any other scheduling software? I would recommend it. Meta is great, but if you are trying to do multiple different kind of creative things, Canva's awesome. Again, Monday, Hootsuite, those types of things. I typically try to schedule a week ahead for clients, at least 2 days. Like if I'm in a pinch, like this morning, the real estate agent, I needed to have a couple posts. I just did 2, and I know on Wednesday I'll do 2 more. So just also like don't overwhelm yourself. So if your quota is 5 different posts throughout the week, I wouldn't do that. I would do a post, then a story, then a post, then a story, because you don't want to inundate people either. And I think somebody had asked that, how do you not annoy your followers with your content? But just try to sit down and plan things, because then that way you can be really intentional about what part of the story you're telling when. And then Fridays, like, it's quirky, but I always say happy Friday. Totally dorky, but it works. It's just the tone. That's my tone I've developed, I guess. Or, wishful Wednesdays, as we do that for the island as well. Make sure your images are very similar, especially on Instagram. If you open an Instagram page, you can see all of the kind of the mosaic of all the pictures. Creating a brand color scheme is really helpful, or a filter, especially in retail, that's huge, or in an industry where people are buying goods, or buying a brand that's like a personal brand, that's really helpful too. And then again, this probably will be out of style in the next couple of years, but utilize days of observation, holidays. It's always nice to get a little Easter wish from your favorite company. Seems more authentic. There was somebody that had asked about events, so I think I put that on the next. Oh, and this is important before I move on. Cross post. So again, I don't know who of you are doing blogs, newsletters, posts, like maybe a show of hands. Who's doing a ton of content, or is it all social media? Okay. So create one theme, write your blog first, I would recommend. Make that as a link in your newsletter so it links off. Then use that to do your social media for the week. So the themes are kind of what paragraph is falling on, a paragraph per social media post. And that won't always work, but it helps a ton if you're really bottlenecked on content. And it's cohesive. And it helps with SEO, so it gets people back to your web page. You know that, you're a web developer. Preaching to the choir. We talked about this already, but looking at weekly calendars, so Meta Business Suite, we already talked about that. Later, Hootsuite, there's other scheduling platforms. They're really not that expensive. I think I pay $119 for Canva for the whole year, and I can schedule. And I can't tell you, so you'd have to look into it, if you're scheduling for multiple different businesses, which it doesn't sound like a lot of you are, if there's a better platform. So just look into that if there's, if you have different brands within your organization. We talked almost ad nauseum about storytelling, but it really is at the root of the best social media posts. And you saw that firsthand in the engagement. It's like a big hug from your brand. And we talked about cross-utilizing. Okay, somebody had asked about events. I think they're fantastic. Something I learned in the fitness industry is your call to action is only as cool as you make it. So we would do member nights, member appreciation nights. We would do a run in the park. And all of it, obviously we loved our members, so we wanted them to have a really great experience, but it was fabulous for PR, because you get a bunch of people together on a summer day to go out for a run. Now everybody wants to come to your club and do that too. So it's just a way to build more value kind of use your, I would say, natural resources to be able to build a much more kind of organic and adoptable brand. And again, that's really specific to different industries, but events are a fantastic way. And you can totally be a fitness center. We'd have pizza nights. They were like the best attendance we had. And nobody got on the treadmill afterwards, but just a lot of people eating pizza. But so yeah, there's a lot of different things. These are just a few. One thing I would say, somebody asked about business to business. I would typically also market to businesses, again, depending on what you're selling. Like, okay, so Ada Zinnia in New Ulm, they do a flower Fridays, like flower name Fridays. I just got flowers like 2 weeks ago, so I remember it well. But they pick two names, a man or male and female name. They put it on their Facebook page, and then that person comes and get flowers. And I literally got a chrysanthemum with like a sprig of green stuff and some little red flower. So it wasn't like this massive bouquet of flowers, but I got flowers. So I was like so excited. And I brought them to my boyfriend's house, and I went home and I never saw them again. So he got flowers, I guess. But just little things like that. And I think what I really love, and I actually bought something. I forgot about that too. My son just had first communion, so I bought him a bracelet. So they literally made like $30 to $40 on the sprig of chrysanthemums from me. So it was a great marketing, good return on investment. And any community related business can do that. It's very simple to have a little member or a little customer appreciation, those types of things. Does anybody do events as a way to just kind of connect with the community? What kind of things are you?
So this Saturday we're doing moms and mocktails.
Oh,
We're
cute.
ready for Mother's Day.
Okay,
So they'll come on in and also do a giveaway at the same time.
nice.
We're going around the block, so we'll do myself and do the 5 May
Cool. So you're gonna do a facial like on the corner? I can just stop and get a facial from you. That sounds great. When is it? No, I'm just kidding.
have a pop-up permanent jewelry coming in.
Cool. And are you doing a Facebook event for it, or how are you marketing?
Just Facebook.
Okay. Are you just doing posts for it, or are you actually creating an event?
We created an event
Okay.
and then we do a post. And then Wednesdays I usually have an event.
Okay. Yeah, and with events, it's really fantastic because you can actually log over to your personal page and invite people. So I also am a musician, so I use that to my advantage because I'm inviting all my friends to my gigs. So I'll create a Facebook post or a Facebook event rather for a gig, and then you flip over to like your not professional page, and you can invite all the people in your personal on your personal side. So I would strongly recommend, even if you're just having a sale, I would recommend an event because it also reminds them like the day of or the day before that event is happening. So it's pretty powerful for free. That's the benefit of that. We talked a little bit about placement. Again, I would say the top places for any industries that you've described so far would be Facebook, Instagram. YouTube is great for Reels, but again, you can really get lost because YouTube is just so saturated. LinkedIn is fabulous if you're doing business to business. And just for networking is really fantastic. If you're boutique-y, again, Pinterest. You can also, in Canva, we've learned that you can make a Facebook story into a Pinterest post. It's the same size. So it's really helpful to be able to duplicate your time. And then TikTok is a great place, again, for like destinations. I don't use it for any client but the island in Belize because it's an international brand. And I would say like our traction is finally starting to kick in because Avery's making magic on TikTok. But it's definitely very saturated, like YouTube, and that's where your next generations are, and it's a lot of people with a lot of content. So, but it's never hurts to start sooner than later. And like I mentioned, Twitter is kind of a give or take. Reddit, I don't know if any of you, I looked into it for a client. It's more of a forum for questions and answers. Frankly, I found it really negative, so I would not market there, but I would definitely check it for your brand if your brand is kind of out there and more regional or kind of serves a bigger area, just to make sure that, that Yelp, TripAdvisor, depending on where you're getting reviews from, Google reviews, just to ensure that your brand satisfaction is up. To go through this quickly, because I want to give at least 5 minutes and respect your time. There is a way to look at peak hours when you're scheduling in Meta Business Suite. It'll tell you when the active times are. But otherwise, you can just try it and see. Again, like I was working for a Breast Cancer Survivors Network, and I'm like, no, we have to post Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It never worked. So we morphed it to kind of an all-week thing, and it was fantastic. So it's really kind of hit or miss, and you just have to do a lot of test trials. And then your audience habits. If you are selling coffee, Saturday morning would be a great time to show this beautiful bagel and a coffee next to it, because I'm going to come and have that, get off my couch and come do that. So just thinking of when your audience is participating or thinking about the things that you have to offer as a value. I will offer a webinar, a follow-up webinar on organic or paid, because I think it'd be really helpful to you guys. I'll email Julie and we'll figure out a time that I'd be able to do just a webinar for that. So if any of you want to participate, it's just a lot to talk about and it's really helpful. So I'll just offer that later. Okay. Here's a question for you. Would you rather do a Q&A or would you rather put your heads down and create a post? I kind of feel like we should do Q&A because I feel like the post creation might get long. Okay. And again, I am totally like, I will help you whether you're my client or not. If you need help on posting something, we are offering free consultations, and that can be part of that conversation. Like I said, we do everything from print to social to digital, web development. Sorry, not to take away from your job. Brand development. So I've probably created 30 logos, and they're all really focused on how that brand communicates, not just like a picture. Yes, Julie.
How would you help someone who doesn't know their brand? Like, they don't have their colors, they don't have their font, like, how consistent should they be with those, just the start of things? How do we start?
I would say, so I'm just backtracking on how I usually design. I collaborate with the person or the entity or board, let's say it's a group of people, work with them on what they want to convey through that brand. Is it vintage? Is it timeless? Is it organic? Like your brand says water to me. It says excitement. It says, there's just a lot of, and I, like when I walked in, there was just this feeling of like natural resources, and experiences. So what do you want the brand to convey like that, without going too far into it? I would mock up a few different designs just to show the people, but really try to coach the direction. And it's always been very well received when we do that. It's a collaborative thing, but with that coaching of like, I don't know if we're going the right direction, those types of things. And then move forward to make sure that their tagline is on spot with what they want to convey as a part of their brand, and that it's also like a long-term thing versus just the next 3 years. And then from that, I think, am I answering your question? Then it would be a linear and kind of a hamburger logo, so that they'd have something for letterhead, and then also a stackable logo that would be applicable to a website for different areas. But more of it is just the strategy behind the brand strategy, making sure that whatever their brand is conveys the emotional triggers that bring that person back. Kind of like McDonald's, like they did multiple studies and said that red and yellow make people the hungriest. So it's red and yellow, those types of things. There's definitely some science behind that. Yeah.
I actually just rebranded, so.
Fun.
But what I did too was I went on Pinterest and found inspiration pics for colors that made me feel happy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a Canva Pro account, and I went into the brand kit and I uploaded those, and it auto generated.
AI is
colors.
fantastic. Yeah.
And it just, so then I could be like, oh, I like this brown, I don't like this brown, like this pink, I don't like, because I'm not a color theory person.
Sure.
But that's a very rudimentary way to at least get the brain working if you're stuck.
Oh, I copy people all the time.
Yeah.
No, I think when you here, I'm just going to show you. I was looking at my website this morning. And I think this is at the bottom of here. So when you look at, I definitely think there's something to get kind of the creative juices going. I don't know how well you can see from the back. She wanted this to be a light bulb, and it's a breast cancer survivors network. So I said, well, what if we made the light bulb the ribbon and then put the rays of light? It did not originally. This is her aunt's handwriting, who then, it's B, Aunt B was her aunt, and she passed away from metastatic breast cancer, but the whole organization is based on her legacy. So she wanted to put her writing that she had written on a sticky note in it. Lyric 3, that's Marianne Christensen has like a philanthropy arm, and they bought the, what is it called? Movie theater in town. And she brought a concept to me, but she really didn't like it. It was very disjointed. And so I put this in between to kind of like make the lines. This was the hardest one I've ever done because I don't, as you can see, they're all kind of more corporate. But that was more French inspired. And that was revision after revision, which was great. It was a great opportunity. But you just, I mean, you kind of have to mold what you're doing with what really inspires the business owner as well. You know, and then like to this, like she does jewelry. She does like leather bracelets with different trinkets on them. So I wouldn't make a really big blocky kind of in your face logo for that. That has to be more delicate. And again, she just wanted a font based logo. This one, a lot of mine I'll incorporate kind of the trademark or the image into the logos just because I think it translates well. And there was a round one for that that had the tree inside in it as well. So it's just, I don't know how you create it. It's really collaborative and they're all different and the process is very different, but it's at the end of the day, I want somebody to walk away from their logo feeling like I'm proud. Like I'm so proud of what we just made. And this is what I want my business to look like, or my, you know, kind of public, in the public eye, this is what I want my business to look like or be represented by. That's a super long answer to that question, but hopefully it's helpful. We're at 1 o'clock, and if anybody needs to head out, but I'm happy to answer any more questions.